Hey guys,
We're live.
we are live. It's Charlotte and Jessica, and we are doing our second virtual wine tasting. And last week, we think everything went real well. We are excited to do it this week because we've got some special guests.
We are excited coming to you from Pensacola, Florida at Aragon Wine Market. We're tuning all the way in 3,700 miles across the country to Oregon to visit some friends of ours over in Willamette Valley. That's Willamette, Janet, not Willamette. For anyone that was confused, it's
Yes.
Willamette. So we're super excited to navigate these waters with you today.
Yes, and we may have a little technical difficulties. We hope not, because we are first time streaming in other people. But we think it's going to be great. And how it works is we will open a bottle of Chardonnay first, and then open the Pinot. And if you've got your wines, start with the Chardonnay. That's what we're going to do first. We will take questions. Feel free to chime in and ask the winemaker. We're going to put him in any minute and see how we go from there. So without further ado, we are going to, hopefully, put in Mary Jolie. She is the National Brand Manager for Willamette Valley Vineyards and head of everything out there. She's awesome. And also we'll have Jim Bernot, who is the founder. This is the winemaker, Joe Ibrahim. And let's get them in and get it started. We're going to try. There's Mary. Hi, Mary.
I think this is part of my responsibility.
Cheers. Hi.
And there's Joe.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank
guys.
you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We're so excited. I've been out to Willamette Valley Vineyards before. It's a lovely property. When I first went out there, Jim Bernot, I think, was living on a trailer on the property. I would say it's grown a little bit since then. Agreed?
Oh, yeah.
Tremendously.
It's a beautiful property. And I guess you guys do weddings and big events out there now.
We do all kinds of events. I mean, we haven't because of what's been going on, but I mean, otherwise, yeah, I mean, we've got something going on every weekend here. It's
Yeah,
a
beautiful.
really vibrant and exciting place to be.
Absolutely. Oregon in the summer is absolutely gorgeous. I spent about 8 months there and in Tualatin, right outside of Portland, and just absolutely loved the Pacific Northwest and just being by the river and just, I mean, the summer there is absolutely incredible. So we're excited to have you on with us today and to navigate these waters of Willamette Valley Vineyards.
And
Awesome.
maybe one of you guys want to tell us a little bit about how it came about, because I know Jim is such a lovely man, and he started as a co-op. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, Mary, do you want to take it away or do you want me to jump in?
It doesn't matter to me, Joe. Yeah, no, Jim actually found the land back in 1981 and started planting in 1983. And he kind of had a great idea in that he needed to raise capital to fund his venture. So he did a public stock offering. And we're traded on the NASDAQ. We're WVV1. And since then, we have shareholders. We have, I think, now 17,000 shareholders throughout the world.
That's
So
amazing.
a lot of wine enthusiast supporters with our company.
Yeah, and I like that. I like the fact that it feels like I don't want to say locally owned, because it is obviously locally owned, but it's a community.
Yeah, it's definitely a dynamic place. Sustainability is rooted in kind of our core principles since Jim started this. In 1983 is when we were founded. We bought the property in
That's
1981.
a good year, by the way. I was born that year.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a really good year.
So it's a beautiful site. We're on a hillside. We've got west-facing Chardonnay, and we've got south-facing Pinot Noir, and a little bit of Pinot Gris planted on this property. And
So you say sustainability, and can you tell us for people that don't know, because there's so many things like sustainability, there's biodynamic, there's organic. What kind of practices do you follow when you follow sustainability practices?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I love it. So when we talk about our wines as being sustainable, it's different from being organic or natural wine either. And the difference is because you could be on a huge organic farm and be very unsustainable, meaning you're working your employees very hard, you're not paying them a reasonable wage, you're not providing them benefits, you're not kind to your neighbors, you're not taking the entire picture into mind. And so we've partnered with a Oregon-based organization called LIVE, L-I-V-E, and it stands for Low Input Viticulture and Enology. And I believe some of our wines show the logo on the back, and that's to show that those wines are certified. I don't think the 2016 has it. Is it?
That's okay. We've got the whole cluster over here.
That's okay. Yeah, we both were like, ooh.
And it basically says, so all of our state vineyards are LIVE certified, and it basically says that, we're taking everything into consideration. How much sulfur we add to the wines in the cellar, how much water we're using to produce each bottle of wine. Our vineyard workers, we have our entirely own vineyard staff, and they're with us year round.
Wow.
They all have health benefits. They can enroll in 401k if they want. We are sponsors and partners with an organization called Salute, and that is basically a mobile health unit that comes to the vineyards or the winery, and that allows our vineyard workers to access medical care, get vaccinations without having to go to a doctor. If they have any concerns, they can be seen at least by a practitioner early on. And then get advice. It's all bilingual. What we can apply in the vineyard is all, soft chemistry stuff. It's not harmful to birds, not harmful to mammals, not to aquatic life. So we're also salmon safe, which is another certifying agency.
I think it touches on what we spoke to briefly, not to interrupt you, what we spoke to briefly last week about just the generic definition of sustainability. It's really about harvesting something for generations to come. So building something for years that not only, like you're speaking to, it's not just about the earth you're pulling these grapes from, but the people that are pulling the grapes. And then the consumption of it, really goes to, building something for generations to come. And I love hearing that, especially in these times, which I feel like that's a phrase we're using a lot right now. But yeah, currently it's wonderful to see organizations that have such a supportive element of it's sustainable throughout your entire company and your culture. It's indicative of the way that you operate, not just in the way that you're pulling the grapes, but in the care for the people that are pulling the grapes. And by building that community and having it be a co-op, you have opportunity that it's the people that are consuming it feel that connection to the grapes. So I love that,
Exactly. And so, it's just full encompassing, even to, recycling our glass and plastic wrap when we're bottling. I mean, everything that we do is embodied into this certification. It's really great. One of the other things that we have, which might be overlooked, is if you look at our corks, they are branded with Rainforest Alliance and FSC certification.
Wow.
So we were the first winery to ever do that, to be part of those organizations, which basically says that these corks were harvested sustainably. They have a record all the way from where they were harvested all the way through to us receiving it here at the winery. So we know that these are actually certified sustainable corks. These corks are, if you look at them, they're made with a lot of different chunks of little pieces of cork. And they're not plastic corks. They're not fake corks. We call them technical corks. And this is a company, Dijon, that we use. And that basically ensures that the wines that you're going to consume are never going to be corked There'll never be cork taint. There'll never be TCA.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
Okay,
we love
I don't know
closures.
what that means, so let me take a giant step back with everybody in the room. What does that mean for that TS? I heard TSA, which I know that means flying, so I don't think that's correct.
Yeah. So if you ever go to a restaurant and the sommelier or the restaurant manager comes over, brings you a bottle of wine, and they do that awkward ceremony where they show you the bottle of wine, they make sure it's what you wanted, then they open the bottle, and then they pour you a glass of wine. And what they're asking you to do is check to see if the wine is tainted. And so we use the phrase cork taint. And that comes about because on cork is a natural product. I actually have this here. That's how nerdy I am. Cork comes from literally this strip of a bark here from a cork tree. And what they do is they drill holes straight into the bark of the tree. And then that's how you get a cork. They're just punched out. So if you look here, you just punch out a cork. And that's all it is. But you're dealing with a natural product, and on natural wood products, there's fungus incorporated in all the little pits and holes in the cork. And those little fungus, when they get in contact with wine, can produce a chemical called trichloral anisole, which is, we call it TCA, not TSA. And that's responsible for cork taint. And that's what the sommelier is asking you to do, is taste the wine and make sure it doesn't taste off from that cork.
Right. And when you say taste off, maybe kind of a musty odor, how would you describe it?
I describe TCA as, imagine you went down into your grandma's dank basement and you're smelling all that mold and that fungus kind of smell. But it can also take on a little bit of a chemical smell, almost like, plastic or a new piece of electronics when you open it from a Chinese factory. It almost has that chemical kind of smell to it.
And so the corks that you have, no TCA at all?
Yeah, so these Dijon corks, it's a natural cork product. It's Rainforest Alliance certified, FSC certified, and it is guaranteed TCA free. So anytime you get a bottle of our wine, you know that you never have to worry about cork taint. And that's really.
Denise had just asked the question when I was asking the question, and really wanted to make these questions authentic if they came to my mind. And Denise just had asked, what was TCA? So we're so thankful that we got that answer, and I wasn't just a novice, and I'm not the only one out there that needed. So maybe let's transgress into talking about this Dijon Clone Chardonnay.
We have actually opened a bottle here and are well into it, and it's delicious.
Great.
And I think maybe some people might wonder, it says Dijon Clone on the front.
Sure.
Can you explain that to people? What that
Yeah,
means?
let me pour myself a glass too.
Of course.
Please do.
Catch up with us, please.
So is there a way to know how many people are online with us right now?
We've got 28 people. 26
awesome.
people. Wow, we lost 2. Or maybe my eyes are bad. It's 26 people.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. So Dijon Clone is a really exciting wine for us, and it's kind of rooted into the history of Oregon and Chardonnay in Oregon. And the term Dijon Clone is referring to Dijon, France. And it goes back into the 50s when there was a blight in France that was killing off all of the heritage clones of not just Chardonnay, but Pinot Noir and grapes grown in France. And there was a guy named Dr. Raymond Bernard who figured out that he could take some cuttings of vines that weren't exhibiting this blight and actually propagate them and see how, to build resistance essentially. And so what he did is he named them, because it was just a scientific trial, he named them numbers. So this is clone number 1, this is clone number 2, all the way up to 115, 667, 777. He had these grapes, they were grown out and producing fruit. And then he had winemakers produce wine from them and then assess them for wine quality. And the ones that stuck are the ones that we use today. And they're, for Chardonnay, we use 76, we use 96, the 2 main clones. And for Pinot Noir, we use 667, 777, and a whole slew of other ones. And So when in Oregon, when they started planting Chardonnay, they followed suit with what they were doing in California. And it's a totally different climate in Oregon. We're cool, we're wet, we have a shorter growing season. And so these California clones that were planted were really having a hard time ripening in our climate. And so there was some seasons where they would ripen, other seasons they wouldn't. And the growers were having a really hard time working with those California clones. So a commission of people with the University of Oregon actually went to France and met with Bernard, and they convinced him to allow us to have the clonal material. And the reason why that he allowed Oregon to have it is because Oregon has the highest standards for varietal composition in their grapes. It's something that a lot of people don't know. And so the French didn't want to give the clonal material to the Americans and allow them to bastardize their varieties. But because Oregon requires 95% of the grapes to be from the growing region, and no more than 10% of another variety labeled to be allowed in the grapes, in the wine. So what does that mean? That means that you can have a bottle named Chardonnay, but it has to have at least 90% Chardonnay in there. And if it says Willamette Valley on it, 95% of those grapes at the minimum.
That varies per state.
That varies per state, yeah. So California, you can have up to 75% in some growing regions be that variety. So that means you have another 25% of something else blended into it. So the French allowed us to get that clonal material. It came over to Oregon, and written on the box, it said Dijon clones. And that's how that term came to proliferate.
That's cool. That's great. For those of you just tuning in, we're with Willamette Valley Vineyards. We're featuring the Dijon Clone Chardonnay right now. We're going to move into a Pinot Noir in a few minutes, but we've got Jim Ibrahim from the wine vineyard as well.
And Mary Jolie.
That's right. I had to think about that and look at my notes for a second just because
She's been there forever.
We've been talking to Joe. Mary's been there forever, so we're happy to have you join us here with Aragon. Just wanted it for those people that had just tuned in.
And Joe, how long have you been making wine at Willamette Valley Vineyards?
5 years.
Okay. And where did you come from before that?
I originally grew up on the East Coast in New York State. I went to the University of Vermont where I got a degree in plant and soil science. And that's actually where I first started working at a winery, was in Vermont, of all places.
Yeah, Gabala was interesting, learning about your history in agriculture and just kind of where you came from a scientific standpoint to, having your passion grow to, the adorable story of you proposing to your wife, all that jazz. But yeah, absolutely. I was fascinated by that. Kind of tell us a little bit about your story of kind of where you came from agriculture to wanting to get into wine.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I was just a kid who was fascinated with agriculture and science, and my parents were both physicians, so I just started drinking. And I'm just kidding.
What all?
I didn't start drinking. I started playing around the house and mixing things together, and just like any curious kid who was interested in chemistry. And one day I took some juice and some yeast, I added them together and it started bubbling. And those was just wide-eyed fascination with what fermentation is in a nutshell. And so my parents got me a home winemaking kit, and I would just start to ferment everything I could. And
I got like a volcano growing up. That was like the extent of my experimentation.
That's a fun game.
That's awesome.
But these weren't palatable wines. They were pretty nasty, actually. And I wasn't in it to drink. I didn't understand what that meant. It was just fun to bottle it, put a label on it, put a cork on it, and talk about it. And it wasn't until I was in college that I realized that I really love this. And I was working at a winery in Vermont, and that's where I started to taste, and that's where I started following the process from the vineyard all the way through the process of bottling. And I graduated. There wasn't any jobs in Vermont in wine. There's more cows than people there. So my brother was working in Washington State, and he said, "Why don't you come out to Washington State? We have a big wine industry here, and see what you can do." And so I did, and I ended up getting connected with Chateau Ste. Michelle and Columbia Crest. in Washington.
James.
Yeah.
That was my first kind of foray into working at large wineries and professional operations, and it was great. But Eastern Washington, if anybody's been there, is absolutely desolate. So I was in my mid-20s living in a town of 24 people and asking myself, what am I doing here? Wine was great. People were great. I was learning so much, but it just wasn't for me. And so I found the job in California. I went to California for 10 years and most recently was on the Central Coast making Pinot and Chardonnay. And that's where I fell in love with both those varieties, but I also fell in love with a girl.
It's always a girl.
And her name is Jo as well. And
That's adorable.
didn't want to stay in California anymore. So we started looking. Jim got in contact with us, Jim Bruneau, our founder. He said, why don't you come up and let's talk? And so he invited us both up. We stayed in our suites, which we have 3 on-site suites, which anybody can come and stay.
Lovely. They're lovely.
It was late November. It was very romantic time of the year. And after that first interview with Jim, I went back to the suite, met my sweetheart, and then we took her out to dinner and came back and I proposed.
At Willamette Valley Vineyards?
Yes. Yes. I read the story the other day, and as a wedding planner, my heart was like, oh my God, I love it. It was adorable. So I was so excited to how could I drop this in? But I love that. Proposed. And then you found out the next day that you had gotten the job, right?
Well, yeah, then the next day was super easy. All Jim cared about was, did she say yes? She said yes. I got the job. We moved and we got married shortly after that. We've been happy ever since.
And Mary, we don't want to leave you out. I know you've been with Willamette Valley Vineyards forever. Is that correct?
Well, I just actually celebrated my 10th year with Willamette Valley Vineyards. It's been a wonderful ride. I've actually been on the national sales team for 8 years. And I worked for an airline is my background. So I was pretty happy when Jim asked me to start, if I wanted to start traveling again and put me on the national sales team. And the very first state he gave me was Florida.
Which we
love.
We love it when you come to visit us, and we hope that you'll be able to come again soon.
I know. I was disappointed that my trip, I would have been there during this week. I was very disappointed that I couldn't go, but that's okay. I know that staying home right now is the best thing, and we'll get back to my travels.
We love it when you come, so we'll definitely catch up as things get back to normal.
I'll show you. I just want to show you real quick. So working from home is not such a bad thing. I don't know if you could see this.
Yes,
that is my backyard. I live on the Willamette River.
Amazing.
And I live in the country in the Eola Hills area, so not too far from one of our vineyard sites. So I have a place to go hiking, and I've got some social distancing kayaking to do too.
Yeah, I would not be mad about kayaking in that river.
And of course, I have plenty of wine. I wanted to say, I just want to add that we love visitors in Oregon. We love to show off our state. I've lived here most of my life, and we're very warm and friendly, and we love to have a good time. So to all of your customers out there, the invitation is wide open. When traveling resumes and you want a trip, Oregon wine country is bar none. It is absolutely gorgeous out here.
Agreed.
And we have so many wineries and so many tasting rooms and too little time. So
and you're right. You fly into Portland and you're 45 minutes and you're into the wine country. I mean, it's easy.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
And and there's so much to do here besides just wineries. There's hiking.
I'm a big Portland
Yeah.
fan. Hello to all my Polaris Dance Theater people. I'm a big Portland fan and go way back for Portland. So I definitely love the fact that we can showcase this wine. So this Dijon Clone Chardonnay.
One question I see that we have before we hit the whole cluster Pinot Noir, which we need to kind of move on to that. We do have somebody asking, Joe, what would you pair the Chardonnay with?
Awesome. Love the Chardonnay, and one of the things that's great about this Chardonnay is it's got the freshness to it. So our Oregon Chardonnay tends to be a little bit on the fresher side. It's a fruit-forward wine, and then there's just underlying elements from the oak fermentation. And so you look at those things, the freshness of the fruit, so it would pair well with fresh fruit. Some of the oak elements, the spice, the baking spice, there's even a little bit of creme brulee, would go great with desserts. And I think it would pair really well with any kind of seafood. You know, we like to talk about the things that are grown together, sometimes pair together really well. So Chardonnay, salmon, Pacific Northwest would totally pair perfectly well together.
That's a good
dishes.
What grows together, goes together, and kind of flavor profiles and how they, Charlotte touched on that last week. For us on the Gulf of Mexico, I could absolutely see this with some amazing snapper or some shrimp or any kind of seafood from the Gulf.
But it does have that heaviness. I could see the salmon that you mentioned as well. So.
Yeah, creamy pasta, Alfredo. Oh my God.
I cooked a chicken piccata last night. It had the little citrusy. I could see it going with that as well.
Awesome.
So we saw that Dijon Clone. We got that at $25 a bottle. We're going to move into the whole cluster Pinot Noir, which I know we had a question about what that was priced at $24 a bottle.
Yep, somebody was asking the prices at the wine store. The Chardonnay is $25. The whole cluster is $24. We are currently sold out of the whole cluster because everybody wanted to try it while we were doing the wine tasting tonight. But we will definitely get some more in next week, and we always do special orders as well. So we'll move on to the whole cluster. And I guess my first question to you, Joe, would be whole cluster. What does that mean?
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this wine. This is our most popular wine, and it's also the most fun to make. So Pinot Noir is what we do best here. 80% of what we make and grow is Pinot Noir, and we want to be recognized for that. And so when we talk about our whole cluster, the name whole cluster, but also talks about how we make this wine, is that we have our own estate vineyards and we're growing Pinot Noir. We have to take the most perfect clusters so they can't have any damage to them at all. And we take those clusters, we bring them into the winery, and we load them directly into a stainless steel tank. And just the gravity alone of those clusters piling on top of each other breaks open those very soft, sensitive skins. Well, then what we do is we sprinkle a little bit of yeast on top of those clusters. And then we add a little bit of dry ice to the tank so that evacuates any oxygen that's in there. And then we close the lid on the tank. And then the yeast percolate down through the berries and starts to form fermentation within the berries themselves. And so if you were to come over to the tank and say, hey, show me these clusters, and you ate a berry, it would be fizzy. The berry itself would be fizzy because you got carbon dioxide inside the berries. And it also has this great sweetness to it. And then we start taking the juice from the bottom of the tank and we start percolating it over the top of the tank and dispersing that juice. And that process is whole cluster fermentation. And so it's a very gentle way of fermenting the grapes. And the resultant wine tends to be a little softer on the tannins. It has great color. It's very fruit forward. And
there's no contact with oak at all for this one?
Yeah, when I do the final blend, I like to pick a couple little choice barrel lots, but by and large, it's a stainless steel fermented Pinot Noir, and we bottle it early in the year, so you capture all that fresh fruit aroma. So when you pour a glass of this wine and you put your nose in it, the fruit just pops out. And that's because we bottle it early because of the whole cluster fermentation. We're not extracting all those tannins and harsh mouthfeel components that need to be aged for 10 or 15 months, 24 months, like some of our other Pinots. So this is very soft, easy to understand, can be consumed young. You'll often see the vintage is very close to the current date. So it's 2018. We're in
2018, yeah.
2020 right now. So yeah, it's easy to approachable wine that people love.
So sometimes when I describe this, and I want you to say yay or nay, I say it's very Gamay-ish, like a Beaujolais, Gamay-ish. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. What's the difference between this and Beaujolais Nouveau? And first of all, we say, well, it's not Gamay, it's Pinot Noir, and it has a lot of similarities to it. So the way we produce it, using whole cluster fermentation and bottling it early in the year and making a fruit-forward wine that doesn't see oak influence to it. So it's really fun because I love to share the fruitiness of Pinot Noir. I like to make fruit-forward wines. I think wine should be fruit-forward. And this shows you the unadulterated look at what the fruit looks like without a lot of age.
Yeah.
With components, without the oak masking it.
Not a lot of manipulation at all.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a confession to make. I don't know if you could see this. Oops, where's my camera? I got the 2019 vintage. Joe just released. You guys are on the 18, but I thought of this. I get to preview the sample before it gets shipped to Florida.
Can you please talk about it?
Yes.
Please.
This will be in your next shipment. I just think there's such a nice, this is my first time tasting the 2019 vintage, and it is delicious. I am loving this.
Oh, I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, for our viewers that got the 2018 at home, I think we started touching on a little bit of this. Obviously it's not that of those French wines, but when I first moved to Oregon, when I really started experiencing wines, one of the things I understood was like latitude. When you think about, climate and geography, you're sitting in the same climate standpoint, and that's why Chardonnays and Pinots are so incredible comparatively to some of those, French wines. So is that a correct assumption, or something that a lot of people have openly talked about that, French wines versus Oregon Pinots, and kind of that latitude concept of why it is so successful because of the climate. You want to kind of talk to some of that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, you bring up a good point. So every day I live north of the winery. I live closer to Portland, and every day on my commute on the highway, it says you just crossed the 45th parallel, halfway between the North Pole and the equator. Well, the early pioneers of the
my property lands right on the 45th parallel.
Oh,
exactly.
Wow. Love
That's
it.
amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the early pioneers knew that, and that's how Oregon wine industry started, is because they were looking at the climate data. They said that 45th parallel actually runs closer to Bordeaux than it does Burgundy, but kind of right in between there. And so they said, look at the climate data. That's a world-renowned grape wine-producing region. California isn't the next wine-producing region. It's actually Oregon. And so they came up to Oregon and started planting grapes. And lo and behold, Pinot and Chardonnay also did fantastic here. And so very close similarities to daylight hours, soil conditions, and growing conditions. The only difference is Burgundy gets rain in August and we're dry. So we're dry basically from June to the end of harvest, hopefully, which is Halloween. So from June to Halloween, we hope that we have dry weather, where Burgundy will get rain somewhere.
Right. Well, one of the things when I first went out there, it was Pinot and Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris. And I thought, why not Chardonnay? And it seems like more people are doing Chardonnay now. When did you guys first start thinking Chardonnay?
So we are the largest grower of Willamette Valley Chardonnay, and that's because we're rooted into that story of the Dijon clones. We were the first vineyard to receive those Dijon clones. And so a lot of Chardonnay being planted now in the valley. By and large, Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris are king and queen in the Willamette Valley. Chardonnay is just an up-and-comer and trying to carve its own.
Chardonnay is really coming onto the Oregon scene in a very big way. I know my distributors to the south of you in Miami and Naples were telling me that Oregon Chardonnay currently is the hottest category going right now. And for good reason. We are growing some amazing, cool climate, bright, lively Chardonnays that have a real elegance to them. I know back in February, I attended the second annual Chardonnay celebration in Newberg, Oregon, which is just outside of Dundee. And there were 60 Oregon Chardonnay producers there, I got to taste all of their wines. It was a very big day for me. But I was there with our owner, Elton Vineyards owner, Betty O'Brien, and I were there showcasing our single vineyard designate Chardonnay, Elton Vineyards, that Joe had a hand in making as well.
Well, and I see here that Jim Bruneau is saying that you live on the Willamette Valley Vineyard and you will take us kayaking.
And I will take you up on that if that's an
He's
actual
commenting
offer.
he's commenting, and he said the whole cluster Pinot, and this may be for Joe, the whole cluster Pinot is age worthy and best to get a case and try it. So how age worthy do you think this wine is?
It is absolutely age worthy. I mean, you look at the color. When we talk about age-worthy wines, we talk about the pH of the wines, we talk about the tannin and the color. It has to be able to support the aging of that wine. And you look at this wine and it doesn't lack any of that. It's dark, it's rich, it's got everything it needs to be age-worthy.
It really is. It is delicious.
I actually chose this wine for my daughter's wedding, and that was 8 years ago. And I did a custom label for her. And I recently found a bottle left over from her wedding that was down in my cellar. And I thought, oh, shoot, it was obviously overlooked. So I thought, well,
try it.
I have somebody that, I might as well open it up. I had the neighbors coming over, no big deal. I opened that up and it was lovely. I was really pleasantly surprised. That acidity in it just really held up, and it turns into a pretty elegant wine. If you're able to forget about it for a few years, pull it back out.
And what about the Chardonnay? How age worthy is it? I would think even more, but you tell me.
Chardonnay follows the same kind of aging cycle as Pinot Noir. They truly are very close in the way that they respond in the growing region and how they age. So, if you have a Pinot that ages, say 7-10 years, you can expect the same thing from a Chardonnay.
Yeah, awesome. So, since we had a question about what pairs well with the Chardonnay, what would pair well with the Pinot Noir, in your opinion? Both of you. Question to both of you.
Jim's on the line. You know what he's thinking right now is barbecue. So try there with any type of barbecue.
Come to Florida. We'll take care of that barbecue for you.
Yeah, the smokiness, the molasses flavor, all the spice elements of barbecue really partner well with Pinot Noir. I love Pinot Noir with cheeses. I love it with desserts. Great with salmon. Any dark meat, a steak. And it's so versatile. Pork has a spicy element to it that pairs great with Pinot Noir.
Here in Florida, we get a lot of Pinot consumption at the holidays, whether it be Easter, which we just had, Easter and Passover, which we just had, and Thanksgiving. So maybe ham-ish.
Yeah, or even turkey and cranberry sauce. All those things would just pair perfectly with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I spoke to this last week, but I'm, you know, when coming from this kind of region, you have the influxes of New Orleans and like Cajun influences. And so when I think of Pinot and I think of that, I want spicy food, the jambalaya, and like all of those elements come into play. And
You guys probably don't get that out there.
you may not. I'll bring the jambalaya if you give me kayaking in Oregon. So
Awesome.
I'm actually very fortunate because I cover Louisiana too, so I get to go to New Orleans a couple times a year.
I'll scoop up some in New Orleans before we head to Oregon. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. This whole cluster is my #1 selling item across Florida. And what I do is I pour it a lot at your wine festivals are so much fun, believe me. And I love to pour this wine. It is such a crowd-pleasing, food-friendly wine. And what I do, and this is what I recommend, I tell people we serve it at Oregon room temperature, not Florida. I think we're about 15 degrees cooler than you guys are.
That's a great point. Can you tell us a little more about that? Because people think room temperature. And what is room temperature, in your opinion?
For white or red wine, room temperature, I say cellar temperature is perfect for elegant wines. So you don't want to serve them at 70 degrees, it's way too warm. And so what I often recommend is you put your whites inside the cooler, down in the ice, and you put your reds on top. And so I always serve this, especially this whole cluster. I serve it just with a tiny bit of chill on it. And it's great for out on the patio, served with, and it's my #1 go-to for ham and your barbecue. It's a great little bottle to take it to somebody's house when you're going to a party. It's very affordable, and or take it to a barbecue. So it's a fun wine. Yeah.
Well, it's perfect for Florida. I mean, obviously it's perfect for Oregon because like you said, what grows together goes together. But for Florida, I mean, we're hot most of the year, and so it's kind of nice to have something. Because some people just like red. They don't care what the temperature is. They want red. And so it's a nice light-ish red that
it's light without losing the body and like an actual oomph to it. Like it's got that flavor profile and depth to it without being heavy. But that's just my opinion.
It's definitely nicely rounded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you guys, I'm going to say thank you so much, and not take any more of your time. I know we appreciate you guys so much for hopping on this virtual wine tasting with us. This is our second one, and this is our most important one because we had you guys and participate with us, and we really appreciate it. And Mary, hope to see you in Florida. And Joe, I've been once before too, and met you. I don't know if you recall, but hopefully I'll be back again to Oregon and we can connect again then.
Fantastic. And please, everybody come visit us once this is all over.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. You guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting our brand. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Oh my God.
Oh my God, that was so cool.
I know. How fun was that? Oh my God. They're so cool.
So I love Mary. I think we're still going. Are we still going?
Yeah, we're still going. So yes, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We were really excited about that. We are out of the whole cluster Pinot Noir. We have 2 bottles left of the Chardonnay.
Yeah,
I think just 2 bottles left of the Chardonnay. So we're almost out of that as well. But we'll get more in next week, and we are always happy to do special orders. So just let us know.
Absolutely.
We are going to let you know what we're doing for the wine tasting next week.
We did get a lot of feedback that everybody wanted to go ahead and be able to kind of purchase and pre-plan for next week. Obviously, not everybody can get here the day before to do it. So we are going to feature a couple of wines that we wanted to go ahead and share with you. And
we just started
I'm so excited
having this
about
in the
this
store, and we love it so much. It's called Summer in a Bottle.
Yep.
And it's a rosé, and it's beautiful.
Yes.
First of all, it's beautiful. It's from the Hamptons,
Yes.
is where they
Upstate New
drink
York.
it, but
That's
it's
right.
but it's from New York, and
It's from Maddox, New York, so upstate New York, from the Wolfer Estate, which we carry normally their Argentinian rosé, which we also have in house. It's
You've probably seen this one in the store, and it's a delicious Argentinian
Really
one.
delicious.
It's got like 15 different grapes in it.
yeah.
Very light, very easy drinking, very French in style, but it's not.
Yep.
At $16.
Yeah, so the price point is wonderful.
This is the one we'll be
rosé.
drinking. You could do either one if you want to, because we'll be talking with Winebow, and Michael Fix is going to join us, and he's going to tell us a little more about the wines. This one's new to us, and so we want to find out more stuff
I've not
about
even
it too.
tried it
So
yet.
I did try it. It was
She did
delicious.
try
But so it's a beautiful bottle. It's a Hamptons
Yeah, we think of as we cross in Florida into like very hot weather. You're hanging out with the kiddos, you're playing in the park. When we return to a normal life, as we all keep talking about, you're hanging out, you're on the boat, you're at the beach, you're wherever, and you're going to want to migrate to a lighter, something that is delicious and consumable in these hot climates. So this is something that is absolutely, for me, you sold me on the bottle. Like, we have butterflies and flowers.
Do you remember when you used to take a bottle and you could put the little thing in the top and put your dishwashing soap or whatever you wanted to put in it? This is one of those bottles you want to save and do something cool with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a cool bottle. It's beautiful, and the wine itself, considering that it's made in upstate New York, to me, I don't generally think of upstate New York for rosé or for any wines per se. But now, there you go. Yeah, and now that everything's kind of changing and there's wines being made all over because of the different practices, it's really fascinating to consume something that is.
So come in this week if you'd like and get one of the two. We may just drink both. Why not?
I'm not mad about it.
We drank 2 bottles this week, so we might just drink both. Give whichever one you want to try. They're both beautiful bottles. Mm-hmm. They're both beautiful wines, and we'll see how it goes again. Again, ask questions. Think of questions that you might have. Tune in.
Absolutely. And as always, if you want to go ahead and pre-order your bottles or give us a call at the shop, we'll be here. We'll run it out to you.
I would say do it because
we sold out this week
of the Pinot for sure, and we only had 2 bottles left of the Chardonnay. So
yeah,
if you want to participate, which we would love it if you do, but if not, just still tune in and listen to us. But if you do, we'll just call us, get us in.
Betsy said she enjoyed her class and her senior in college isn't so grumpy anymore. And we're so happy
awesome.
We can help absolve that concern for you.
Yes.
Definitely tune in next week.
We're
so thankful that you guys are with us. Like we said, pick up this Wolfer Estate Summer in a Bottle. Leading into next week, we'll have plenty in house, and we'll be happy to run it out curbside or do a delivery. Just give us a call at the shop.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys for tuning in.